Welcome back to the Shot Clock, everybody. Jason Rubin here with you. A hell of a show we have in relation to NBA content with Andre Snellings coming in and joining us as always. The Warriors and the Clippers. Whoo! What an effing rivalry, man. I can't tell you how excited I was for this game I don't know. You see the schedule a week ahead, you're like, ooh, Warriors-Clippers play on Thursday. That should be interesting. And, of course, they got the big win on Tuesday, so, undefeated Warriors play the Clippers on Thursday. Even juicier of a story to be talking about. So, Andre, before we get into anything else, I have some facts for you, and I want to read them to you.
Okay, I like facts.
The Golden State Warriors are 3-3, down 20 points at any point since 2014. The rest of the NBA is 13-4, 186. Fact, Stephen Curry is the only player in NBA history whose video game self is worse than real life. And third, fact, I think it's warmer in Michigan than it is for Blake Griffin shooting in the fourth quarter.
Ooh.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. Those are some good facts. I enjoyed those. And that down by 20 stat is pretty ridiculous. I mean, that's like a 500 percentage versus 0.001 or something crazy.
Right. Listen, they make up for like at least 15% of the wins when they're down 20 points. And they were down 23 points in the first half to the Clippers. The Clippers basically played 3.5 quarters of unbeatable basketball against a team that, for all we know, can't be beaten. And Chris Paul, 7 of 7 shooting in the first quarter, was commanding the floor. And I love seeing when the elite point guards go up against Steph Curry, something comes out of them that they want to fight for that throne. And it's on the court, they want that title back. We've seen it with Kyrie Irving in the finals last year before he got injured. It seemed like he was on a mission to remind the NBA, no, I'm a damn good point guard too. And then we see it with Chris Paul, who arguably still the best pure point guard in the NBA and still arguably up there with Steph Curry. But when all is said and done, the Clippers choked. With 5 minutes left in that game, they could not get a basket. The Warriors, they got into a three-point shooting contest with the Warriors. Bad idea. Always a bad idea. And Blake Griffin disappeared. We've seen the narrative before. And the Warriors, I don't even want to say escape, because when you come back from 20 points with a 500 record since the beginning of 2014, you can't ever count them out, especially with the way they shoot the basketball. Andre, what did you take away from this game? What was your favorite moment? Talk me through this. What did you see?
Oh, yeah. So, there were a few things in what you just started off with that I thought was kind of interesting. First of all, the whole taking the challenge versus Steph Curry thing. I agree with you. I actually tweeted about that last night because as a viewer, it was fun to watch. It was like a heavyweight fight. It's like, okay, Chris Paul and Steph Curry are going at it, in almost like a one-on-one way.
Right.
The problem is, as soon as they start that, Steph already wins because that's his game. If you look at NBA players in two kind of general ways, you've got the dominant one-on-one player or the dominant individual player, and then the dominant make the team better player. Chris Paul is probably the best individual player in the NBA right now. Especially, like you said, he's with his shot, he's like a video game all the time. Where Chris Paul would still have an argument as a point guard is that he can make the team better. He can put everybody in the position they need to be. He can set them up for easy shots. And if he does that the whole of his impact can be larger than the whole of Steph Curry's impact, even if he's not scoring like Curry. And I also tweeted this last night too, is that at some point it really seemed like Paul took it too personal and was like, no, I'm going to beat Steph Curry. And he started, instead of coming down and running the offense, he started coming down and looking for his own shot. And in the first quarter, when he was 7 for 7 or whatever it was, that was great. But in the fourth quarter, when he kind of started becoming human again, that was the time that it was his job to help get Blake Griffin in the position. Because like you said, he disappeared in the fourth. And his game, in a lot of ways, he's similar to Karl Malone in this respect. His game is not set up to you throw him the ball on the post and he'll create a shot. he's much more of a finisher. You know, he needs a Stockton the same way that Karl Malone did. And Paul stopped being Stockton and started trying to be, you know, Steph Curry or Iverson, and that kind of left Blake and DeAndre Jordan on the island. I think they combined for like maybe one made field goal in the fourth quarter.
Correct.
And that's his job, is to create for them.
Yeah, and you know, I noticed 3 specific sets in the fourth quarter, 2 for the Clippers and 1 really highlighting Harrison Barnes. And I'm going to get to the Harrison Barnes ones in a minute. First with Chris Paul, when they're down 118-115, Chris Paul drives the lane and decides to kick it out to Paul Pierce on the wing. Now, granted, Paul Pierce, one of the best finishers and closers in NBA history. He lives for the big shot in the Chauncey Billups style way. Not a bad move to make, but the Warriors kind of read that immediately and were all over Chris Paul. And then he goes in and doesn't get the foul call. I think it was a foul. Regardless, it didn't get the shot he wanted. Chris Paul could have easily taken that floater. He has that shot. He had 35 points at that point in the game. I was surprised because I shouldn't say I was surprised. I've seen Chris Paul do this many times where he's looking to distribute and help the team, where if he puts it on himself to take that shot, a lot of the times he has that opening, that window to get a high percentage shot off. And coming from a guy who we have seen close before, Game 7 against San Antonio last season, I was surprised that he kicked it out to Pierce instead of took it himself. 118-117 is a lot better than 118-115. Warriors are up 3 with under 30 seconds left. You can pretty much count the game over if you have to foul. You can't put that team on the line. But I want to get to Harrison Barnes because I think out of all the players on the Warriors, he's still flying a little bit under the radar. His three-point shot is getting slightly better as the season goes on, but he has come up in big moments as part of big comebacks for this team. We have 3 screenshots from 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter I'm going to throw to. Iguodala is running the point at this, is bringing the ball up. Again, remember, Barbosa's out, and Sean Livingston's out. So they don't really have a backup point guard in this situation. Iguodala brings the ball up. He eventually passes it to Festus Ezeli right on the block. And as you can see what's happening, basically, Harrison Barnes goes to set a pick on Austin Rivers. Ian Clark, who's gotten very little playing time this season, has a wide open lane to the net, thinking that Josh Smith's going to roll over. Instead, Ezeli bounces it back out to Harrison Barnes with Austin Rivers' back turned to the player. Paul Pierce doesn't switch on him quick enough, and Barnes gets the 3 to make it 96-95. I'm watching that play happen. I must have watched that. I rewinded it a few times because I was so amazed that big of a defensive breakdown could have happened to the Clippers that early on in the fourth quarter when they were the anti-version of that for the first half. That was not going to be a shot Barnes was going to get in the first half of that game, but he did in the second. And I credit Harrison Barnes because the play immediately before that, he drove right to the rim and put it up and under. So Barnes has been an unbelievable standout for this team and deserves a little bit more credit. Granted, when you're playing kind of in the shadow of Stephen Curry, who's doing these out-of-world things, it's tough to compete. Do you agree with that side of Harrison Barnes and how much he's been effective in the fourth quarter, or are you also still on the Warriors team ball movement, everything that goes along with it?
No, I think Harrison Barnes is very effective, and I don't know if the way you phrased that last question, I don't know if they're mutually exclusive. I think that Harrison Barnes is a better talent than maybe his role allows him to show, and also that the Warriors team dynamic allows him to be, more of a pest / killer to the opponents. Because, I would say, I think I remember that sequence. And if I'm not mistaken, right before he hit that 3, Jamal Crawford had just hit a 3 to put the Clippers up by 2. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of a dagger type feeling because it was Golden State had come all the way back and they had just taken a 1-point lead. And then Jamal Crawford hits a 3 and it's like, oh, okay, they're reestablishing order. And then Barnes immediately hits a 3 right back. And it's like, oh, snap, no, the momentum is still coming. And so, I think it was a huge moment. But I feel like the Warriors team is built of a bunch of players, not with the same skill set, but with kind of the same, we have a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. And we're not scared of the moment, and we're really athletic. And if you slip, we're going to get you kind of players. You
can't make any mistakes against this team. You can't. They're going to take advantage of you.
Yeah, they all can shoot. They all can. I mean, even Iguodala, who can't shoot, when the moment's right, he can shoot.
Yeah, and it's amazing because that's a team that can close. That's a team that going into any game, if they're down, I don't want to say 20 in the fourth quarter, but if you're down 10 in the fourth quarter, you got to watch that game through the end because it's not going to be surprising if the Warriors come back and win. They close out games, 8 of 9 from 3 in the fourth quarter. That's basically perfect. So we move on from the Clippers Warriors to our good friend Sir Charles Barkley, because Barkley had some harsh and maybe truthful words for the Golden State Warriors basketball team, saying 25 years ago, in the way that the NBA had much more instigators, it was a more physical game. You had the hand check rule, all these things in play. They would have gotten beaten up if they played the style of basketball they're playing now. I agree. I tend to agree with Charles Barkley, mostly because I do love his unfiltered opinion on a lot of things. But the Warriors, even if they got beaten up, I don't think they would stop them from winning as many games as they've won. I think it might result in some fights, some scraps, some technical fouls, maybe some ejections. But I don't think it stops the Warriors from the way they're playing.
Yeah, I tend to agree because I think that there's this sense that the 80s or the 90s were kind of the golden era of the NBA, and that if anything is done differently now than it was then, that it's an indication that, well, it wouldn't have worked then. And I mean, I do agree they would have faced much more physical defenses, and the scoring would be different, but they would have also been facing much less sophisticated defenses. Like defenses in the 80s and 90s, if you actually go back and watch it, they are not playing Tom Thibodeau schemes. No, right. They are not, and maybe some of that was the rules because you had there was no zone and you had to play more, one-on-one. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it was, but I mean, it was just a different game. So yes, I think the teams would try to beat up and make the game ugly against the Warriors. But as long as the three-point line was still there, I don't think the defenses were equipped to be able to take away the three, because it's easy to beat up a team if they're going to the rim. But the Warriors have a team that's like, oh, you know what? We can shoot a high enough percentage from three that it makes sense for us to just operate out here. And I don't think teams back in Barkley's heyday would have known what to do with that.
Right. I agree with that. And again, I like Barkley. I like that he's unfiltered about that. But again, you make the point. I think the three-point line, you're not going to get too physical out that far away from the rim. I mean, guys like Ezeli, probably, getting beat the hell up underneath. Right. Draymond Green, the great trash talker that he is, probably getting beat up. But again, it's not going to stop their shooters from sinking the baskets. All right, guys, as always, make sure to comment below with your favorite moments from the Warriors and Clippers. You agree with Sir Charles Barkley? Follow Professor DRZ. That is Andre on Twitter, and myself at JasonRubin91. Make sure to check out RotoWire.com for Andre's Hoops Lab columns. They're awesome. We're going to get into some more discussions about that later on in regards to the big man and maybe the infamous prone label.